Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews. It's your hosts Ian and Gary.
Hello.
And today we're joined by Linda.
Hello.
To review and discuss 1974 disaster movie Earthquake. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, the story follows a massive earthquake, 7.4 on the Richter scale, hitting the city of Los Angeles, and at the same time kind of surrounds a multitude of different stories with personnel going on in the city. You have Charlton Heston and Ava Gardner playing a miserable married couple. You have George Kennedy, who you might remember as Ed from the Naked Gun trilogy, playing a burnt-out cop questioning his job. You follow Lorne Greene, who you might remember from the original Battlestar Galactica series, who is the father to Ava Gardner's character and the boss to Charlton Heston's character.
Frack yeah.
And then you have a few mini stories going on with a black stunt motorcyclist and a woman and her son getting caught up in the earthquake. This film is a fiendish little movie I enjoy.
Well, I think it's quite dated now. Rewatching it now, you're kind of looking at the effects, and you can understand that they're all practical effects when the actual earthquake devastation is happening, but it's the whole film now just seems quite comical. And I don't know whether it's because this sort of tradition of making these disaster movies has not really stopped. There's still an appeal to watch mass destruction, whether it's the White House on Independence Day, or whether it's 2012, or we watch the planet kind of killing everybody. But back at this point in time, I think we'd only had the Poseidon Adventure and sort of and Airport, which sort of started this sort of disaster trend. And so Hollywood was like, quick, we need to cash in on this. And so at the same year we had Earthquake, we also had the Towering Inferno. But Earthquake is sort of traditional to all these other disaster movies, where it doesn't just follow a couple of characters. It follows an ensemble of characters, some of which will only pass each other in certain scenes or not even interact with each other at all.
Plus, the city of Los Angeles and its millions of people living, loving, planning, fighting until nature's most violent upheaval forces them to battle and claw for life itself.
Yeah, I'm going to hold my hands up now. It was actually my suggestion to review this film. And that's because, one, I'm a big disaster movies fan, always have been. In fact, when I was a kid, I used to read up about all real natural disasters. I just had a fascination about it. And I compare this film to a wagon wheel, in that my memories of wagon wheels, which were the round chocolate things, bars, my memory of a wagon wheel from childhood was that there's this massive, lovely chocolate, gooey, really nice, marshmallow in it and everything like that. And then, as an adult, when you try the wagon wheel, you're a little bit disappointed.
Is that why they put jam in it?
Yeah, because it didn't quite seem the same as when you remember it from back then. And that's what this film does to me. I remember watching it as a kid. I watched it probably late 70s, early 80s, something like that.
Yeah.
And thinking, this is really cool. You know, big earthquake, love all the special effects and everything like that to it. And then haven't watched it for quite a number of years and kind of thought about it. So we watched it, and then it was like, this is hilarious. Yes.
Hardly ever got two in one morning.
To what?
Earthquakes.
Another half hour, I won't feel the one that's supposed to knock California into the ocean.
It's just not quite the same.
It's not aged as well, I don't think, as perhaps Towering Inferno or Poseidon Adventure, which I think have still got a lasting appeal to watch.
I just want to tick off some of the mistakes. First off, the editing is just so shoddy in places. The first opening shot is Charlton Heston running up a road. And then it just cuts to him in the house doing an exercise machine. And you're like, what, he teleported? You're not even establishing that he got to his house and went indoors. And then he has this whole argument piece with Ava Gardner, and she the relationship I really hate. The scenes with Charlton Heston, I know he's a big actor, I really enjoyed him in Planet of the Apes. but they're just so dragged out, and I'm like, come on, where the fuck is this fucking earthquake? That in itself is built up quite well with the.
I think that they did attempt to build up the tension.
Yeah.
And it does. And you say about the bad cutting and everything, and it was really bad. But in the kind of, I don't know, I suppose the 5 minutes in the lead up to the actual earthquake itself, they seem to do it even more, where they're switching backwards and forwards to all the character, and you do get that sense of, it's about to happen, it's going to happen any second now, yeah. So I think they kind of use that a bit. It's just
some of the acting as well. I mean, you have those 2 security guys at the dam, and one of them goes into an elevator.
Fred.
And when the elevator comes back up, he falls back out. There's all this water everywhere, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, how does he drown at the bottom of an elevator shaft?" Then they spend the next hour trying to work out how he drowned at the bottom of an elevator shaft, and then they go,
Max? Hey! I find the trouble. I guess the earthquake busted the conduit and it's flooded the bottom of the shaft.
"Oh yeah, there's water down there." Oh shit!
Oh yeah, and there's an earthquake happening. They have to call the inspector out, and they're like, "Inspector!" every time. They're like, "Oh, there might be a crack." Oh,
I have to admit, I'd never actually seen, or even in pictures, the San Andreas fault. Mm-hmm. But watching earthquake, seeing this massive rip in the middle of the country, I'm like, that can't be real. That's like a special effect. And then I looked up and I was like, it's fucking real. Don't build a city there. just fucking asking for trouble.
Well, it actually makes California the prime spot to actually make this movie.
Yeah.
Just for that reason alone.
And I believe the person who came up with the idea for the film, it was because there was, I think in 71, there was a minor earthquake in Los Angeles. Yeah. And that's kind of gave him think, because there actually haven't been that many, when you look at disaster movies, there's not that many earthquake movies out there. There's a lot of made-for-TV on the Sci-Fi Channel.
That's correct, yes.
And there was I remember there was a TV dramatisation series thing, which was showed over a period of time as well. But there hasn't, since Earthquake, there hasn't been a big earthquake-style movie. And I think that's because, and they said it, I think, themselves as well, to make a disaster movie when, how long does an earthquake last for?
A few seconds,
minutes,
and it's quite difficult to actually build a film around that, and which is why they do have to spend so much time of the build up to it, and building up all the characters. Then you get your earthquake, and then it's the aftermath of the earthquake.
Yeah. It is quite a tried and tested formula,
so.
And I think it's kind of grounded in this film, actually, where it's probably come from. But I do like that Charlton Heston's character is an architect, and so they are kind of having a dig at all of these buildings that were constructed with the knowledge that they have experienced tremors and earthquakes in the past, and that these buildings are not earthquake proof. And so the film does make a slight offhanded jab at that, but for the most part the film is just about watching the destruction of LA.
However, details are expected momentarily. Please stand by for further...
There's other buildings sure to have come down. First time in my life I'm ashamed of my profession. We never should have put up those 40-story monstrosities. Not here.
I particularly like the scientists. You know, they really made me think about how people are, you know, how scientists who are trying to study these things and prevent them are put in that situation. You know, you've got this young student who has just worked out for all the variables and mathematics that a big earthquake's going to happen, and the older 2 guys are there saying, "Oh, you know, you might be wrong. You know, we're not too sure." And then his evidence starts to come true, and they're like, well, what do we do? And he's like, you got to warn everybody. You got to tell the mayor. You got to get the army involved. And then one of the old guys says something like, you want to risk 4 million people rushing out at a city, you know, panicking. Where are they going to go? They're going to go into the mountains. They're going to go down to the river. Where are they going to go? And you're like, shit, yeah. You're kind of left with that thought of let it happen and try and deal with the aftermath, which obviously
I can feel more empathy for that sort of decision that has to be made, whether how much advance warning you're going to give these people, which you fucking should. But you are also looking at the fact that you are going to incite riots, rebellion, and anarchy and chaos, which is what has happened in history with earthquakes in our own history.
Yeah.
And the film does actually show some snippets of morality sort of going out the window with some characters doing some dubious things or using it as an opportunity.
The store clerk, that is a weird character.
He's fucking nuts.
You can tell he's
He was
weird.
odd just the first time you see him at the checkout till.
And, he's looking at that girl, Rosa, and he's just like eyeing her
Which
up
is
and down.
actually Victoria Principal, who was in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, but very early part for her.
Yeah.
And he's very weird from the start, and then he goes back to the apartment because the National Guard are being called in, and he's got this big hair, but he puts a wig on to cover his hair. And then these guys are giving him grief because obviously they think he's gay, and then later on obviously he turns up and he's part of the
militia.
The militia to try and keep control of the looters. But you can just tell he's fucking crazy. Right there, you're just like, he should not be in charge of a gun at all.
And then he gets all rapey just to make the scene even worse or just more awkward, where she's just like, I'm not hungry actually. Just, ugh.
I gotta admit though, I mean, once the earthquake does hit, Skynet couldn't have done more destruction. I mean, the guy does explain that, the city is going to be hit with a force like the bombs at Nagasaki and Hiroshima rolled into one. And you don't really get that when it does happen. You have these special effects, but the after bit with the painted backgrounds and the drawings and the set pieces, the city looks fucked.
Yeah, the wide shots of the city burning are still impressive to look at today. They still look apocalyptic.
Yeah.
But when you get close, you kind of see the fake sets falling apart.
Yeah.
There's an instance where an entire wall of bricks, you can see all the bricks, and they all fall down together like a piece of card.
And you see all the wood behind it, and you can just tell it's a set piece falling.
There's a scene where the guy's holding up a massive pillar just before he gently lets him fall on him, and it's like you would have been crushed.
Yeah.
And there are some humorous quick cuts of people falling. I know it's a terrible thing that's happening and hundreds of thousands of people are dying.
Yeah.
But rewatching the film now, I'm laughing
You just giggle
throughout all of these scenes. There's a couple of instances where I go, ooh, actually, yeah, you've just seen like hundreds of people die. But then it'll cut to something really ridiculous again, and it'll just makes you snigger at how badly it's aged. But the film, the earthquake scene in the film does last quite a long duration of time.
Yeah.
But it is showing lots of devastation, and the longer that scene plays out, the more impact it is having, and the more sort of engrossed you are in the devastation that's happening.
As well, it's back in there's no CGI in this, and
that's right.
And they were the film actually was known for the fact that they used about 141 stunt people in it, and they used real blocks of masonry concrete. They did, even though there were a lot of scenes where it's obviously cardboard and things like that. But they did do their best to build up these sets, and they're quite significant sets, some of them as well, to reflect. And they also revolutionised a new technique with the cameras to get the effect of the earthquake itself. Yeah. So where the whole camera was kind of on this special tripod that kind of shook.
Yeah.
So it gave a bit more of a realistic look to it. So I think that, yes, there were kind of things that were really a bit naff and everything in that, but and I think that's probably why I remember it from a kid being quite thinking in awe of, oh wow, this is really cool effects and things like that.
I think my favourite cheap effect though is the wobbling building, where they kind of had a mirror reflection and just sort of warped the mirror a little bit to me, and it does look really bad, but it does give across the effect, and it was actually an in-joke where that was actually filmed way before they made the movie, just as a test piece, and so they kind of sneaked that into their film.
Wasn't it meant to be a replica of the building of like Universal?
Of the HQ Universal, that's right. So.
I love those four little cars you see on the interstate, and obviously we know now that the camera is shaking in place as it's watching, and the guys are just swerving. And
why don't they stop?
Why
are they still driving?
I mean, all of those cows!
The cows, I forgot the cows. I mean, that's what I thought. You see the airplane going off and all these people are just running all over the place. They're screaming. They don't know where to go. I always got told to stand in a doorway It was the safest place to go. Did those rules come out after Earthquake? And they were like, you see this? This is a learning curve.
Don't do it.
I like the fact that there was that scene with the black stunt driver who goes to go down the loop, and obviously he goes round and he falls off. It really looks devastating. Obviously, it's a stuntman, but we found out that that wasn't actually supposed to happen.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, and they just decided to keep it in the film and then refilm the whole stunt sequence again. I was
You
like,
could tell because that
that's a nice little touch.
landing looks so awkward.
Yeah,
He's
he
like,
landed bad.
ooh.
But, I mean, some of the most awkward parts. Charlton Heston's sex sequence. Now, I don't want to start putting people off their food for the rest of their lives, but, you know, Charlton Heston is supposed to be the main guy, the big hero, fucking, you know, whatever in this sequence, in this film. And he's obviously having problems with his wife, but then kind of building a relationship to another woman. And they meet up for a drink in the middle of the afternoon, because obviously that's what Americans can do. And they're drinking wine, but obviously because the editing is so bad, it just cuts immediately to the woman sat in front of a mirror brushing her hair, you know, dressed. And she turns to Charlton and she says, you know, when we made love, why were you so angry? And I'm like, oh, why are we talking about Charlton Heston having angry sex?
I'm trying to think of exactly the right word. It was with such anger.
Anger?
Yeah, anger. Did I anger you?
No. I think you are absolutely lovely.
You know, and he's lying on the bed, you know, shirt's undone, like, yeah, I'm king dead. And they're talking and he grabs her by the arms. It looks really aggressive. He grabs her and he's like talking to her. I'm like, all right. Calm down. Where the fuck's the earthquake? I want the earthquake to come along.
I thought it was also funny though in the scene where they're rehearsing sort of the play or the film that she's working for.
Yeah.
They were actually the earthquake scripts that they were reading the scene that they were doing.
Yeah. But I think that kind of brings us on to the acting quality, the quality of acting in this film. And we have to say it's pretty dodgy. There's a lot of overacting from Charlton Heston.
Indeed,
Ava Gardner, big time.
Ava Gardner was so infuriating to watch in this film. I just wanted all of her scenes to end really quickly.
My favourite is George Kennedy in this movie. He is the rock behind this. I mean, Charlton Heston, is actually the hero, and he does take up about 65% of the film with his scenes. But George Kennedy is kind of, like we said, he's a cop who kind of feels burnt out. But then when the earthquake happens, he's then rallying people and getting them to do all the stuff. So he's really like the secondary hero. And my favourite scene is actually one of his scenes where at the beginning, before everything kicks off, he's in a chase sequence trying to stop a joyrider. And he chases them into like a celebrity neighbourhood, and the guy crashes into a hedge, jumps out the car and runs off. And George gets taken by his commander, and the commander just starts ridiculing him and giving him shit and telling him what he did was wrong. And George pulls off this massive dialogue piece, which was just absolutely phenomenal. I just loved it.
That little girl was thrown about 15 feet in the air. She was probably dead before she hit the sidewalk. Blood covered 3 whole cement squares, not splattered, solid, just like paint. The driver never even slowed down. And he almost got away because some Peckerwood rich man's whore in a cop's uniform was worried about a hedge.
The best dialogue of the entire film.
Yeah.
I actually set him up. You said he's not the primary character, but he's still the most genuine character in the film.
Totally.
And the one that you can probably relate to the most.
I enjoyed his sequences in the bar a lot better than Charlton Heston's. And
he saves the cute puppy.
Yeah, the cute puppy. You need a cute puppy.
It seems to be standard makeup of the film, isn't it? At the beginning, you've got the near miss of the pram.
Yeah.
The lady pushing the pram. You've got the cute doggy moment.
I think the cute dog moments
saving
in
the kid.
all of these disaster movies.
I think it was the same dog as well. There's no choice.
Basically, he's on a break. He was on a contract. He had to do 2 films for Universal.
To do Tower Inferno and Earthquake. But no, definitely he was good. My favourite part of the scene, if we're talking about favourite scenes now, is actually it's a small bit part, but for somebody who's a very well recognised person, that's Walter Matthau. I can never pronounce his surname. And he's plays part for drunk, and it's in the bar that George Kennedy's character is sat in, and he's obviously been there for quite a long time with his little shots of bourbon, and during the earthquake when that's happening, it cuts to the bar, and everybody in there is like, oh my God, running around, like this sort of thing. And there's him sat at the bar still with a drink, trying to drink it, and he only falls over after the earthquake's finished.
Yeah.
And it's all fine, and then he gets down to get off his stool and like falls over. That was brilliant.
I just love it when he shouts out.
Hey, what do you have to know to get a drink around here?
There's people dying everywhere. It's so slapstick. It's so
Very
silly.
much, yeah.
I think the funniest moment in the film for me, it's not necessarily my favourite sequence. It's just because it's so well put together and so awful at the same time for the effect they were trying to give across. And it's where the building is shaking and all of the executives at the top are... I think it's weird that so many of them are just loitering at the side of the broken windows. And so a lot of them are scrambling to get to the elevators.
Yeah.
And there's people pushing in and they're cramming in there. And straight away you're just thinking, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
You shouldn't really be using the elevators. No. And so, of course, you get the main executive who just pushes his secretary out the way and he's like, I've got to get in the lift. Lift door closes and then you see the straps of the elevator that's holding it start to snap and give way. And so the camera just sort of warps. And so you sort of get the illusion that they're being compressed in the lift as it's funneling down. And then just to top it all off, the cheapest effect in the entire movie is this quick few frame blood splat on the lens of the camera.
Oh, that bit.
Oh, it's so bad. So that, for me, it's actually the most memorable moment in the film.
We shouldn't really laugh. I mean, like we said, this earthquake's going off. People are dying. You're supposed to be serious, but you see them all run to the elevator, and I'm just like, you shouldn't use elevators during an earthquake. That's stupid. And then the blood splatter when it hits the floor. You're like,
but we know in this film that common sense doesn't exist in this film.
Yeah.
Because you've got the other hilarious moment is when a guy goes to run into a house to shut his gas off and you hear somebody shouting, shut the gas. And he goes in with a cigarette in his mouth. Yeah, and obviously,
he's just waiting for it.
That's right. So things like that. The houses on stilts.
Oh God, the houses on stilts
as well. It's like
putting all the injured people into the basement, into a underground car park of another building, which obviously doesn't look safe at all. You've got everybody there having fun, and you're just like, are you planning on getting these people killed?
Yeah, a lot of moments like that.
So would you recommend a modern audience watch Earthquake? Iain?
I would and I wouldn't. I recommend this film to people who find themselves with 2 hours free on a Sunday afternoon. You've just finished having your roast dinner, you're sat there putting your feet up, Earthquake's on TV or you have it on DVD, and waste 2 hours of just nonsense.
I agree. This is again, it's another lazy Sunday movie.
Yeah.
It's not a film that you would necessarily want to invest all of your time into. You could easily have a conversation while the film's playing out in the background and kind of look over and watch some of the destruction sequences playing out and kind of pay homage to Hollywood kind of endeavouring to blow shit up spectacularly.
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of recommendations, I think if you are a disaster movie, kind of if you love that genre, then you kind of owe it to watch it, because it is a disaster movie, and in the 70s, as we know, disaster movies were the big hit. America they saw a niche market there for that type of movie. I think by the end of the 70s it kind of died off a bit, and they decided not to make any more until we had the
resurgence of
more
it.
modern day ones that we're used to. So I think you should watch it, but if you're not kind of like you say, it's watch it for a giggle. Yeah. To have, but don't take it kind of too seriously. Expect this serious film.
I just want to add in as well. This is a small spoiler warning now. I'm going to talk about the alternate ending to the movie, which will also relate to the original ending of the movie. So, if you are actually going to watch the movie, then you should stop watching now. But thanks for watching. So, in the actual movie, there is quite a downbeat, depressing kind of ending where Charlton Heston's character has gone back to save his wife instead of just climbing up to be with his new girlfriend.
Yeah.
And he kind of... the camera it's very dark, it's late at night, and so you see the water kind of levels rising, you see loads of people getting swept away and screaming, and that does actually come across very well. And it's sort of, I think it was Charlton Heston's decision to change the ending, where he was like, we can't have this morally unjust ending where my wife is drowned, I'm with the new girl, and walk away, and it's like, thanks Earthquake for sorting out my life. So they changed it and actually killed off those characters.
See, I kind of enjoyed that. As much as I thought their scenes were over the top and they dragged out too much, and I wanted to see the earthquake, when it gets to the end and he's taken upon himself to go back to the building, which was obviously collapsed on the car park, he's risked his life to go in there, and he doesn't actually say who he's going in there to rescue. He's just going in there to rescue people because he believes they're alive, and he takes in my boy George Kennedy with him as well, and they start pulling all the people out, and then he's down at the bottom of the ladder, and she gets washed away, and for a moment
you think he's going to go leave her, don't you?
But then as soon as he jumps in the water and he goes after his wife, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I love your character now, But obviously they die, and then it just leaves the girl, the mistress, kind of there, kind of. I felt kind of bad for her because obviously she'd already just lost her husband, and now she's just lost her boy as well. And I'm like, ooh. But
it also leaves George Kennedy's character has the final line, which originally was meant to be for Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
But it kind of, that to me appreciates the fact that he was actually the real hero.
Get
in the film.
But that final line is a bit cheesy. Yeah. I mean, after everything that's happened, you get introduced to this doctor character like at the last few seconds, and his scenes seem to get worse and worse. The first scene he's just like, oh, I'll help all the children, and then the next scene is just like, don't tell anybody about their deaths until we can sort the whole situation out. The next minute, it's just he pointing out the obvious. What the whole place, the car park's coming down, and he's like, "Get down!" No shit, I'm going to get down. And then he comes out and he turns to George Kennedy, and they look at the apocalyptic city in front of them, and he goes, "Huh."
This used to be a hell of a town, all of a sudden.
I'm like, there are people dying around you. Haven't you got somebody to go save instead of making quirky one-liners?
Well, interestingly though, they were looking to make a sequel to Earthquake 2. Yeah. And the script was floating around for many years after this just to keep the story going, where it would actually follow some of the same characters that have all moved to San Francisco, where another earthquake strikes, causing tsunamis and other such things.
A bit like Jaws 2 then. The second earthquake comes along, tries to kill off the survivors from the first film.
Maybe it's more like Final Destination. It's using earthquakes now.
But I mean, the ending though is a good climax.
It definitely gives the film kind of a more lasting impact. Yeah, especially with that downbeat ending.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't really expect that to happen.
That's
I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh my God, they can't kill Charlton Heston off.
And just the last few minutes of the film as well.
Yeah. But so you don't expect it to happen. So I think you're right. It does have more of an impact.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
Gardner.